Hey everybody, welcome back. Now we want to talk about writing smaller and easier code, and specifically let's use if statements to talk about this. So kind of a background precursor. The PowerFX programming language is nothing more than functional programming essentially, or programming with functions I should say, not functional programming. That is actually its own thing. But in any event, the PowerFX language has the ability to use and write a function, and then it takes in parameters. And you can put functions inside of other functions, and those more functions inside of those functions. And so every time you add more functions inside of functions, they have one or more parameters usually. And so it gets really, really crazy to understand and follow along, even though you can do the formatting, much like what you see here on screen. But the problem is that because it's not written in a normal programming language, like I almost think for especially enterprise applications, because of the volume of code that needs to be written for business logic and a bunch of other stuff that goes on, that it's easier to read regular traditional code in a lot of senses. So what I would encourage you guys to do is to write better, smarter code, or at least think about what it is that you're writing. So here's a great example of something that I see happening again and again. So what will happen is somebody will write a patch statement, right? And they'll flesh it all out and they'll write this thing, and then all of a sudden something will come up and they'll be like, you know what? I need to do something different. I need to do this based on a scenario. And so what they do is they say, okay, if, and then they evaluate it, which I have a Boolean value here, right? So if selected, and we've been seeing this throughout the course. And so let's jump back over into my Power App so that we can talk about the context of what this is and what this looks like. So here's this update. You've seen this, right? So when something is selected from the gallery, I want to be able to update that item. And if nothing is selected from the gallery, I want to just simply save a new record or save the item. And so everything's based off of that Boolean bit that I just showed you in a previous 2 videos, I think it was ago. But in any event, so the question might be, how can I write a good select statement on that? And so with regards to the button, I need logic on there that's essentially going to patch the database. And so in this particular use case scenario, I'm saying if selected, meaning somebody selected something in the gallery. Then what I want to do is I want to patch the database. And what I want to do is I want to find the record that was selected, and I want to update it with, this field information. And so, and then in this other use case scenario, I want to go ahead and say, you know what, it's not selected, so it's false. And that's where this comma here is. This first part of the statement says if it's true, and then this second part says, if it's false. And so I see this again and again. And as I've written the code, this can be better written. And the reason for that is because the only thing that I really need to differentiate is this or this. So again, this is really the part that I need. This or this. This is what I really need to be focusing on. And so if I do that, now what I've done is I wrote a single patch statement, and I'm just wrapping the if around. Okay, if it's selected, so if it is selected, then just let me update the existing record. Otherwise, let me just choose the defaults, because everything thereafter, everything that I'm updating is the same. Now this would change in the event that, for example, on the update, if I didn't want to go ahead and write that value because I already have it, right? I already know it's there. Really, the only thing I know that I want to update is the text. Like I don't need to, and I shouldn't really update the value of the index, right? That would be kind of bad or stupid. But in this instance, it's not hurting anything the way that it's done, right? And so you might err on the side of should I do it, should I not do it? And so in this example, it's actually better to leave it in because it isn't hurting anything. And by leaving it in, it allows me to simplify my if statement and write the code. So, if I were to just eliminate this now, this wouldn't work, because while it would work if I'm updating, it's going to not work at all if I'm writing a default, because now I'm going to be missing my index. So just, leaving it in versus not leaving it in. And so start thinking about how can you collapse the code? How can you write things better? And the first place to look at always is your if statements, because I see a lot of people copying and pasting huge chunks of blocks for inside of the true and then duplicating it with a slight little nuance of some subset inside of there. And so if that's the case, then just write a smaller statement, but just focus on the specific areas that if it's this, then that. If it's that, then this, that kind of scenario. So anyway, that was the point that I wanted to illustrate in this video on how to make better code easier to read. And the best place to do that is inside of an if block, because again, I see a lot of people copying and pasting enormous amounts of code, and it will make the difference between something that could be 50, 70 lines versus 30, 35 lines. And so when you're having to scroll that much, it makes a huge difference, trust me. All right, that's it for this video. In the next one, we'll talk to you about understanding the application URL.